HOA fenced me off from my own ranch, so I turned the gate into a toll road they pay for. Have you ever had your very livelihood, the land you've poured your heart and soul into, suddenly cut off, isolated by the arbitrary decree of someone else's inflated sense of authority? I'm Ethan Riley, and my life is my ranch, Evergreen Acres. It's not just a patch of dirt. It's a living legacy, passed down through generations, providing fresh, organic produce to local schools and food banks, and hosting educational workshops for city kids to connect with the land. My primary access road, a gravel path that's been there for over a century, connects directly to the main county road. It's essential, the lifeline of my operation. Then, Ms. Evelyn Albright arrived. Evelyn, the newly elected, self-anointed queen of the sprawling, pristine Grandview Estates Homeowners Association, saw my working ranch not as a vital community asset, but as an unacceptable rural intrusion. She was all sharp angles and sharper pronouncements, a woman who believed that anything not conforming to her meticulously curated vision of suburban perfection was an affront. Her first official act, it seemed, was to send me a curt, imperious letter demanding I cease and desist using my access road, claiming it was disrupting the serene ambience of Grandview Estates and lowering property values. Her ultimate, thinly veiled demand was for me to find an alternative access point, effectively forcing me to abandon my historic road. Her tone was dripping with condescension, her words a thinly veiled threat against everything I held dear. She looked at my farm, a testament to hard work and heritage, as if it were a festering wound on the pristine landscape she envisioned. I tried to reason with her, to explain the historical easement, the vital role my farm played in local food supply, and the sheer impracticality of creating a new road through dense, protected woodland. I even provided official county documents, dating back decades, confirming my right-of-way. Evelyn merely waved a dismissive hand, her perfectly manicured nails glinting. "Mr. Riley," she purred, her voice a brittle whisper of disdain, "your quaint little farm simply doesn't align with the elevated standards of Grandview Estates. We are building a community of distinction, and frankly, your rustic charm detracts from our property values. The bylaws are clear. We control all access points bordering our community." Her words, delivered with an air of unassailable authority, left no room for debate. She was not interested in historical rights. She was interested in control and exclusivity. The true nightmare began on a Tuesday morning. I drove my truck, laden with freshly picked vegetables for the school lunch program, towards my access road, only to find it completely blocked. A massive, ornate wrought iron gate, flanked by imposing stone pillars, stood where my simple gravel path had been. A sign, emblazoned with the Grandview Estates HOA logo, declared, "Private Road Grandview Estates Residents Only." My heart pounded with a mix of fury and disbelief. They had fenced me off, cut off my only direct access to the world, effectively trapping my farm. The vegetables, perishable and urgently needed, sat in the back of my truck, a stark symbol of Evelyn's petty tyranny. As I stared at the imposing gate, a glint of white caught my eye. Tucked beneath one of the newly laid stone pillars was a discarded, muddy blueprint. It wasn't an HOA document. It was a county plat map, old and faded, but unmistakably clear. It showed my access road not just as a private easement, but as a designated public right-of-way for emergency services, specifically marked for fire and ambulance access to a newly developed, secluded section of Grandview Estates that had no other direct route. Evelyn had not only ignored my historical rights, she had deliberately obstructed a vital public safety corridor. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about my farm. It was an act of reckless endangerment, threatening the lives of hundreds of residents. And then, a crucial detail. A small, almost invisible notation on the map indicated that a portion of the newly erected fence actually encroached a few feet onto my property, beyond the designated public right-of-way. This wasn't just obstruction, it was trespass. Armed with this irrefutable evidence, I resolved to confront Evelyn publicly. I learned she had called an emergency HOA meeting, ostensibly to unveil her new security measures. I now realized with a surge of cold fury that included my illegally blocked road. I arrived at the meeting, the plat map and my own property deed clutched in my hand, just as Evelyn, radiating an almost unbearable smugness, began her presentation, complete with glossy photos of the imposing new gate. I waited for a lull, then stood up, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Evelyn," I stated, holding up the plat map, "I believe this document sheds a rather inconvenient light on your security measures." Her eyes, which had been sparkling with self-satisfaction, immediately narrowed. She tried to dismiss me, her voice sharp. "Mr. Riley, this is a private HOA meeting. You are not a member, and you are disrupting our proceedings." She attempted to rally the other HOA members, painting me as a disgruntled, eccentric farmer, a nuisance to their refined community. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is precisely the kind of element we are trying to remove from our beautiful Grandview. But just as she was about to call for me to be removed, a quiet, unassuming man named Mr. Chun, a retired city planning official who lived in Grandview Estates and often bought produce from my farm, rose from his seat. "Actually, Ms. Albright," Mr. Chun interjected, his voice calm but authoritative, "Mr. Riley raises a very serious point. That access road isn't just his private easement. It's a designated emergency services right-of-way for the entire North Ridge section of Grandview. Blocking it is a felony." He then pulled out his own, more recent, official city planning document, which clearly showed the emergency access route. The room fell silent, a collective gasp rippling through the air. Before Evelyn could even stammer a denial, the doors to the community hall swung open. Two stern-faced individuals from the county planning department, accompanied by a local sheriff's deputy, walked in. They had been tipped off by Mr. Chun, who had grown suspicious when the new gate appeared. "Evelyn Albright," one of the planning officials announced, his voice devoid of emotion, "you are in violation of multiple county ordinances. The construction of this gate obstructs a public right-of-way and constitutes criminal trespass on Mr. Riley's property. We also have reports of forged documents submitted to the county for this project." Evelyn's face, which had been a mask of carefully constructed composure, crumbled into a terrified, pale mess. Her jaw went slack, her eyes darting wildly around the room, searching for an escape that wasn't there. She stammered, then erupted into a desperate, high-pitched shriek, blaming misunderstandings, overzealous contractors, and a misunderstanding of the paperwork. It was the pathetic wail of a tyrant whose kingdom had suddenly collapsed. Then, a surprising voice emerged from the crowd. Mr. Thompson, a long-standing, quiet member of the HOA board, stood up, his face etched with regret. "And Ms. Albright," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "perhaps you'd also like to explain why you pushed so hard for this gate project, not for the community's security, but because your son-in-law's construction company, Elite Builds, stood to gain millions from the new section of Grandview, and you were promised a substantial personal consulting fee from the deal, all by ensuring privacy from the undesirable elements of the county road?" The revelation hung in the air, a final, poisoned arrow. Evelyn had been exploiting the HOA not for the community's benefit, but for her own illicit gain and her son-in-law's profit. The fallout was swift and brutal. Evelyn was immediately stripped of her HOA presidency, her reign ending in public humiliation and a perp walk captured by local news. The county planning department launched a full-scale investigation, leading to severe fines and criminal charges for obstruction of a public right-of-way, trespass, and fraud. The HOA members, horrified by her deception and the legal exposure she had brought upon them, voted unanimously to sue her personally for misuse of funds and damages to the community's reputation. Her carefully cultivated social circle, once so eager to bask in her reflected glory, publicly disavowed her, fearing association with a pariah. Elite Builds, facing legal repercussions and public outrage, immediately lost their lucrative contracts and faced a barrage of investigations, leaving Evelyn utterly isolated and financially ruined. She lost her position, her reputation, her social standing, and faced a future of crushing debt and legal battles. Her karma was a public, humiliating spectacle. As for my access road, the county ordered the immediate removal of the illegal gate and pillars. But I, with the help of my lawyer, discovered a fascinating legal loophole. Since Evelyn had, in her zeal, extended the fence a few feet onto my property. And since the HOA still desperately needed that access for their new development, as the emergency right-of-way was now legally confirmed, I had leverage. I didn't just let them open the gate. I installed a new, heavy-duty, automated gate on my side of the property line, complete with a digital keypad and a prominent sign. Evergreen Acres Toll Road, $500 PR pass for Grandview Estates residents. Emergency vehicles free with prior arrangement. The HOA, desperate for access to their new, expensive homes and to avoid further legal battles, had no choice but to agree. Every time a Grandview Estates resident wanted to use that convenient shortcut, they had to pay me. It was a sweet, ironic victory. My farm continued to thrive, now with an unexpected, lucrative side income, a constant reminder to Grandview Estates of the price of their former president's arrogance. I felt a profound sense of vindication, a quiet triumph that justice, however painfully achieved, had prevailed. My farm deliveries continued uninterrupted, the local schools and food banks grateful for the consistent supply. The community, shaken but united, began the process of rebuilding trust. In a world where bureaucratic power can become a weapon and individual ego can endanger an entire community, where do we draw the line between upholding rules and protecting lives and livelihoods? When faced with such blatant disregard for rights and safety, what would you have done?